road.
Cause it was originally gonna cost us what, 1 point something million?
I don't remember that much.
With the design and all that, it was gonna cost us over a million.
Infrastructure.
Right.
Cause I remember making the comment that we could pave it every year for the next 10 years and it would still be under than what the cost was gonna be.
Because,
Yes, sir, Councilman.
and Hector, have you all put paper and pencil to, let's say, one street and see how doing it,
What
with the
if-
county would compare to maybe T-Con that was here before?
We have, well, we have obtained several quotes, and then I don't know what county's fee is gonna be, but we're basing it on a per block basis. And I don't know what county, that's.
Could we do that so that we could figure
Yeah.
out, okay, is the county gonna
I
be
mean,
cheaper or
can we do
not
that? Is
cheaper?
that legal?
I don't know, because, I mean, it looks like we're going into this blindly.
Well, I think what you could do is this, and my recommendation is to approve the agreement, and if you don't wanna use any work orders, meaning we just say, look, we don't wanna do it because we find it more advantageous to do something with a contractor, you can do that, but right now, you're just agreeing to the interlocal, you're not,
Yeah.
the work authorization is gonna come, if you guys don't wanna do any work with the county, we could always do that and not.
Mayor.
Oh, hold on a second, Councilwoman. Rodriguez.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if we go ahead and just approve this, so we don't delay the process,
Right.
we can get it started, go ahead and approve B and C together, so we can start getting that prices, and then when the work order comes through, you can either call for a consistency or put it back on the agenda, and then we go from there.
Council, that is a great idea, just to get the ball running. Again, call you guys and tell us what it is, but we'll kind of know when we get it in front of us. But that's, again, what the engineer told us, that they're gonna give us a price, so that we'll have an idea what it could cost. Hold on, did you have a question?
Yes,
Follow up?
and I think that, I mean, theoretically, it should be way costly, less, I mean, it should be more costly effective going with the county than going with the private, that's gonna want a big profit. So I think that we should probably, I agree with y'all, that we should go do a road or two, figure out how it works out. And if it works out and we're seeing tremendous savings where we could expand to other roads, then we continue going.
Yes.
And if we don't, then we see our other options.
Right, good plan. Councilman Hernandez, you have a question?
Yeah, there's something about the county cost not exceeding 15,000, what is that in reference to?
That's a good question. I saw that too, I think they're doing nice.
What does that mean?
$15,000, right?
So then they're gonna start 3 days and then stop?
Well, that's not, maybe.
Turn on the machine and you put it in drive, and yeah.
I mean, at the rates that they're charging, 15,000 should pretty much almost do a road, you would think.
And
Wait a minute.
we're gonna see, but they really, and you know, they did, I saw them do Sand Hollow Road from, you know, the Swamp Road to the, 140, Swamp Road, or what, you know what I'm talking about? Anyway, they did that like in a day, and that's what the engineer said, is they will, they're gonna hit it really quick.
Because whenever they did the one over here by, where, no, the one that leads to Ingram Ready Mix.
Sutton,
That's,
Sutton Road.
Sutton
Sutton
Road, they did that one pretty quick, and they did it pretty well. They did it, I think, like a few years back, right? And it's holding up pretty well.
yeah.
But with that being said, if there's no further questions, I'd like to go ahead and make
Okay,
a
we have a
motion.
motion and second, we're ready to
For B
take a
and
vote
C?
on it.
Yes, both.
But do
I'll
you wanna
second
make,
that.
okay, wait, hold on a second, we've got a lot of
You can
answers.
ask a question.
We wanted to, you guys want a chance to see what it is, is that right? Okay, so we have a motion and second to approve items B and C. There is an amendment that the council wants to see what the price is before we pull the trigger. All right,
A rough estimate.
Well, also,
okay, Councilman Hernandez.
does that 15,000 mean they're willing to pitch in 15,000?
That's what I understood, that's what I understand.
That's what I understand.
That's.
So maybe that's why they said they're helping us.
Okay, all
What
right.
page was that? Which page was that?
Oh, what page? It's page 50,
I think that's, yeah, I remember that.
at the top of page 51.
I say let's just hold them to that. They wrote it up.
You said page 50, Councilman?
That's what it is on my,
Is it this one?
it's a county cost.
Yeah, I think that, what I.
Page 2 of the contract.
That was the amount that they were willing to contribute. My understanding.
So that's what they're charging us for 15,000.
Oh, no.
It goes from page 50 over, carries on to 51.
Federico.
Oh, here it is, I see it, it's not highlighted.
Yeah.
County does not, will not, any cost of the county does not exceed $15,000. So we're saying there is some sort of
The ceiling.
a cost, if they absorb any cost, it won't be more than $15,000.
Yeah.
Do you read it the same way, Mr. Attorney? Bobby, do you read that the same way,
As long-
Yes, I did, the way that Councilman Mayor Pro Tem understood. Yes.
Does not exceed.
All right, so we do have a motion and second. Council wants to see that first bid. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously for B and C. All right, item D, discuss and consider amendment, addendum to the gas supply contract with the city and West Texas Gas, Gas Marketing LLC, and BP Energy Company authorizing city manager to negotiate and enter into said agreement. I am going to ask for a motion in a second.
Motion.
A
Second.
motion by Councilman Leal, second by
Second.
Councilwoman Hernandez. At this point, I'll ask for discussion, city manager.
I'll just be brief. Your packet on page 87. This is a company that we work with to purchase our gas from, for our gas system. And basically what this is basically trying to make sure that we protect ourselves and they protect themselves from things like Snowbit. This thing really hit a lot of cities, and I wasn't aware of this till we spoke to this gentleman. Some cities actually had to borrow money to pay for utilities during Snowbit. That's how high their gas bill was. So this is what it does, and so we were lucky, we've been lucky to have a flat fixed rate. There were other communities that were not so lucky. So all this does is protects this, and what I look at West Texas, this West Texas, gas, is I look at them as basically being a cooperative. They buy fuel for a whole bunch of cities and communities, and they have a price, that we pay, but nonetheless, that's in essence what it does. It's pretty complicated. I got a little confused, I'm sure. I read it a couple times, but on page 88 and 89 is the brunt of the changes. And if you look at just number 1 where it says selling delivery to the dealer at the very bottom there, on page 88, it's the very bottom there. If you can understand all that, you're better than me.
Mayor,
But it is hard to understand.
Yes, sir, Councilman Leal.
has, council reviewed this contract?
Yes, I did. My primary concerns I mentioned to the city manager was they're asking for a 30-year extension, so it's just, and that's, I believe, also why the city manager is asking for the ability to negotiate with them as it relates to not only the term, but the terms, because, 30 years is a long time, but they're asking everybody for 30 years.
Part of what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call communities that they work with and ask how many years they're going out. I agree with Bobby, 30 years is a long time, so.
Now, Fred, now, in going into this agreement, and if y'all come into an agreement between you and West Texas Gas, you will bring that back to us, and for we can finalize it, correct?
Well, if you authorize me to negotiate and enter into, I won't bring it back. Again, the only issue I have is mine is the term, and unless the council wants to see the term, that's really the only concern I have.
What term are you going for, or are you aiming for?
Well, I've never seen anything, I've seen energy contracts for 10 years, but I've never seen anything more than 10.
Now, anywhere in this contract does it state that they can fluctuate the price of the gas at any point?
No, our price is
It's
fixed.
fixed.
So it's gonna be fixed from now straightforward for the 30 years, if we agree on the 30 years.
Right. All it does is this protects them and us, because they understand, they have challenges as well. Because again, all they're doing is the way I look at them is they're the hub, the distributor of this gas. And all, what it did, again, it hurt them, is why, I didn't know it was this bad, but apparently some communities got it really, really bad as far as.
What's their current rate with the city?
We are at, you know what, that's a good question. I don't have it with me, council member, but I can get it to you. I have to look at the contract.
Now, the units that we buy from them is totally different than the units that we sell it to our residents, correct?
Right,
Yes.
well, the idea is we're purchasing what we need, right, and then we distribute it to, so it's just basically a pass-through. We pay for it initially, and then we pass those costs on to the
Consumer.
residents, yes. So it is, we do consume, and they sell us based on consumption.
Okay, so, but it's flat rate,
Yes.
okay. Well, I mean, if there's no further questions, I'd like to make a motion, to go ahead and slow move.
All right, there is a question before we go. Councilman
Is
Hernandez.
this the same Unigas that we city was, in dealings with.
The city work?
The city was in dealings with,
Okay.
trying to clear up, some issues that we had.
Prepayment stuff? Is that-
Prepayment stuff,
We're
did
still
we clear that
prepaying.
up with them,
We're
or?
still prepaying.
We're still prepaying?
Yes. I don't think there's,
I thought that was cleared up
I don't know the
Like
history of all that.
4 or 5 years ago.
I think we have to switch out every single gas meter.
No, it has
Was
to
there,
do.
was there issues with payment? I don't remember.
Yeah, there was issues with payment before, 2016.
Yeah.
And
Was
I-
there-
I
gas
do recall, I
funds
think that
in
was cleared up.
It was supposed to have been cleared up. If,
I can check in.
and I think we should have a document.
Yeah, and it was, we had to prepay basically for a layman's term because our credit wasn't established. But after we hit a certain threshold, then they allowed us to, pay, not in advance.
We had,
Are we
No,
paying-
we
Well,
still pay in advance.
well, we
But it's-
supposedly
but it's
reached
not
that
for the whole
threshold.
year.
Like
We were
5 years
paying
ago.
like an
Oh, you're
advance.
paying the entire year?
Yeah.
Oh,
Isn't that
no,
right?
we're just month to month now.
Yes, we don't pay year to year.
You don't pay up front.
We pay the month to month upfront. We don't pay, if he's talking about paying year to year, we don't do that. We pay month to
We
month.
were having to prepay up front
Per
per
month.
year.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, we don't do that.
No, paying monthly.
Yeah, monthly we do that. I feel a lot better with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is correct, to clear it up, that's how we used to have to do it, Pray, I believe,
Wow.
we pay a year in advance.
Didn't know that.
But then we hit that threshold and now we're paying month to month,
Yes.
in advance, but it's not an annual payment. So it's a little better to establish our usage, not a projection of actual.
I noticed in the paperwork we got today, which is different than what we got in the email, oh my goodness, on the gas utility, we're under utility fund.
834.
Right. So we're not collecting what we're actually paying out.
Now, you're at I think for years, and this is my understanding, the gas fund has always been in the road. It's been like that for, I think it's been like that for some
I
years.
understand that, but earlier you said we pass on our savings to the customer.
We have the
We're
cost.
not charging our customers what we should.
Right, that's exactly right. That's exactly.
But what savings do we have to pass on to them?
Well, actually, there's no savings. Actually, you have to charge them more. Is you have your set rates, the council does, and this is a challenge, and I guess we can get into it now, we need to. If you're asking me what we need to do to make sure that we're not in the red, charge more, because you're basically purchasing the gas at whatever cost the gas or whoever's charging it. The challenge we've had is our operating costs, to include the price of gas, is not enough to support the gas system. So you have your number of customers, and you look at that as your revenue side, and what you're consuming, and then you look at your expense side, which includes the price of gas, and that's what causes you to be in the red. So there has to be at some point, some decisions to be made as far as the continuation of providing gas at the rates we're providing. Yes, sir.
And Council, I'll share with you what the city manager shared with me a number of times. A number of cities do outsource this like we do with our trash waste pickup. And it's something to consider, because it doesn't generate revenue to cover the expenses. So that's something we can talk about as we walk through our budget, things that we look to better utilize our utilities as far as covering their expenses. So at this point, that would bring up a question. So if we did, should council decide to sell the gas or contract the gas out, would we be obligated under this agreement?
That's a question we probably have to get the city attorney, but I wouldn't think that we would.
Okay.
Well, if I may.
Councilman Hernandez?
Yeah, I know in the last few years, we've had trouble with those agreements that were 25, 30 years. Because when those councils down the road get a snag, like we have several times, then we're like defenseless, basically, and we have to pay the price.
Yes.
And that's taxpayer money. So we need to really look at this and look at what they're asking us to do. Say yes to a fixed price, but keep us for 30 years. That's a long time.
I agree.
Would the council be comfortable authorizing him to negotiate a term for a 10-year, or, I mean, rather than?
What I could do is one of the things we could talk about is maybe do it every 5 years for the option to renew. Similar we do other contracts, you can renew every, and if you no longer want to renew, whatever the case may be, you know.
You're saying do like a rolling 5,
Right, you just roll every 5 years and then up to whatever.
or
25
do a rolling 10-year?
Yeah, whatever that option may be,
Yeah.
that's, we can consider that.
I mean, we really don't know what the market's gonna do.
Everything's
No.
going up, nothing's coming down.
Yeah, well, it does have value to have a ceiling, but as Councilman Hernandez said, it can be a little concerning 30 years down the road. I mean, we're lucky because prices are low, and I don't know the price, but I would say it's probably pretty reasonable. I mean, natural gas, I remember when it was $12 BTU, and it's 3 or 4 now, I'm not sure. Anyway, well, council, what is your pleasure?
I made the motion already.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay, there's a motion and second.
There was a
We're gonna
motion.
give him unfettered,
Well, see, for him to negotiate, because we really don't know what they're gonna come back to him. We could say 10 years and they might not budge for 10 years, but that's, I'm leaving it to his wisdom.
okay, all right, we've got a motion and second for him to negotiate the contract. No other questions, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously, thank you very much. Moving on to item number E, discuss and consider amendment number 3 to community services agreement and authorizing the city manager to enter into said agreement. This is an action item, this is involving our, if I'm not mistaken, our hotel motel tax.
Got it, Jeff.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask for a motion and a second.
Motion.
I've got a
Second.
motion by, Mr. Leal, I got a second by Mrs. Hernandez. At this point, we'll turn the floor over to our financial director,
Can hear me.
Jackie.
This is for an amendment, for community services, this is to extend, our contract with them for a year. They are the company that is handling our hotel motel tax. They recently just did an audit for us. They are honestly wonderful, like, I give them a 10/10, like, they are always on it, like, if I have to call and get a hotel occupancy tax certification, like, they send me the reports right away. Like, if a hotel's getting ready to sell, they'll send me a report and tell me, okay, they still owe all this, and we have to get that taken care of before we give them the hotel occupancy certificate. They literally, from this last audit, there was some misreporting from some of the hotels, so we should be getting, $15,000 from, between those, hotels that were audited. Every year they'll do 4 random, hotels here in town. Is there any questions about that?
What's the price on this? I didn't see a number.
Council, you can see in the agreement, they charge us about $2,200 per, and it's 4 random, so it's gonna cost us about $8,000 to $10,000 to audit these hotels, maybe 4 per year, and so, it sounds like we made money on that. When they-
Yes.
And it's random, so it keeps them honest, they know, and they have to provide the data.
So we're getting
Other-
15,000 back, and
Councilman Rodriguez.
you minus the 8,000 that we charged them.
Sure.
And it's still a win-win situation. We had them last year, and, I'm for this one.
Other than the 1-year extension, did anything else change?
No, sir, nothing else is changing.
Slow move, Mayor.
Second, Mayor.
There's a second motion by Councilman Leal, second by Councilwoman Rodriguez. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Raise your hand, all in favor, please. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item F, discuss and consider authorizing the issuance of a request for proposal, RFP, for the perpetual brush disposal at the city transfer station.
Motion.
Second.
There is a motion by Councilman Leal, a second by Councilwoman Rodriguez. The key word here is perpetual, and that is to be interpreted, never again will we allow a mountain of brush. There may be a molehill, there's not gonna be a mountain. All right, at this point, we are going to turn the floor over to the city manager.
Yes.
Motion in a second.
Council, that's just, the item is just to that, again, perpetual, and so, what,
I'll help you.
we're good?
We're going for RFPs?
Right.
I'll
Motion.
second that.
Slow move.
We already know the
Questions?
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna allow any questions. We've got a motion in a second place. Is there any questions? Ready to vote on? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. I like the way we're moving. Perpetual, every one of those things.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay. All right, moving on. Item G, discuss and consider ratification of emergency purchase of submersible sewer pumps for the main lift station at the wastewater treatment plant.
Motion?
There's a motion by Councilman Rodriguez, there's a second by Councilman Alamontes. Folks, we've already spent the money.
It's our-
Slow move.
So moved, second.
There's a motion, a second already, I'm gonna call for questions.
Question.
There is one question, Councilman Hernandez.
That's Gilman Road.
Okay, I wanna go back to 2016 when we did a lot of work at that sewer plant. We seem to be doing a lot more right now. What